All right, we are back on Sportsbit Betting Insight today. Paulie and Teddy. Tuesday, October 4th. It's Tuesday. Deep dive means Jimmy Vacaro. How'd the players do? How'd the books make out? Somebody made a big bet the other day on a team to win the World Series. He'll share that story and what was it like at the finish of Tennessee and Georgia. Big game breakdown. MLB playoffs are here. The two play-in games. We'll get to the wild card games coming up. Monday Night Football. Another winner for us with the play of the day. The Vikings. Suffocating defense. Norv Turner spreading it around. And we liked Zimmer against McAdoo, the coaching edge. Big win for the Vikings, Teddy.
Sure was. And again, I know it's been a running theme on Sportsbit, but let's revisit it one more time. Adrian Peterson out for the Vikings. I seem to remember Mr. Paul Howard telling me what a big deal it was, and I'm like, no big deal. Not a problem. Running backs are interchangeable. Jerick McKinnon, what'd he do? 4.8 yards per carry last night, and that included a couple of carries at the end where they were just trying to run out the clock. This Viking team's, they are so well coached. You talk about that Zimmer versus McAdoo battle. They don't beat themselves. No turnovers in Minnesota last night. Fewer penalties, again, for the Vikings last night. That is the best coaching staff in the NFL, period. Hands down. No apologies to New England. Belichick's the best coach. Staff-wise, man, that Viking staff's really good on both sides of the ball.
And Norv Turner calls a great game. Boy, he spreads it around, Teddy. You saw Patterson, he got him involved early. Rudolph was a big part of the offense. McKinnon, Diggs, they even hit Johnson for a long pass play. And they have a good quarterback, a guy that can spread it around as well. So with that defense, it reminds me of those great Giants teams in the 80s with that great defense when Parcells told Phil Simms, milk the clock and shorten the game. That's what the Vikings should do because that defense is so good.
Well, yeah, I mean, Eli was under duress for 3 quarters. Don't be fooled by his stats. His stats came out looking okay. They were garbage time stats. He kind of got some stat stuffs, and they had a couple of drives at the end. But the reality was that Minnesota's defense was dominant, and the Giants' defense wasn't. And that's the difference in the game. The Giants only have one takeaway the first 4 games of the season. Minnesota had 2 takeaways in this game, though one of them was a muff punt that set up their first touchdown. But when the Vikings get that first touchdown, when they're playing with a lead, forget about it. It's going to be really hard to beat that team. We were talking about Minnesota in the preseason, saying they are Super Bowl contenders. And then Bridgewater got hurt, and AP got hurt, and well, maybe we'll see. Minnesota is a Super Bowl contender, period. Plain and simple.
Yep, Beckham a non-factor, and something to watch, though, that we talked about on yesterday's show. Blair Walsh missed another field goal. Robbie Gould's out there, Teddy. So that's something to watch because Mike Zimmer's not going to put up with that. This is a special team and a great defense. You have to have a dependable kicker. Christ, look what happened last year in the playoff game to Seattle. He missed what amounted to it. Huh?
Everyone's still complaining about that playoff game, and they're forgetting they covered anyway. Who cares?
Right, come on. He missed what amounted to an extra point. You can't do that. I'm just saying.
But they covered. Who can't? They didn't win. They covered. That's what we care about. They covered.
The game. Cut it out. They might need another kicker. All right, market report. A lot of moves. Let's start in the NFL. Money, no surprise here. Money coming in on the Eagles on the road, up to 3 at Detroit.
Yes, it's a surprise. Because look at how much money it was. The Lions were -1. They were home favorites on the look-ahead line last week. Philly had a bye. So that means that the line moved 4 points based on one team's result in 1 week. Doesn't that seem a little bit like an overreaction to you?
No, they stink. Stafford's garbage.
Listen to the concept here. The Lions were -1 on the look-ahead line last week. We're not talking about at the beginning of the season. We're talking about last Tuesday. Yeah. The Lions are -1. You can bet Philly +1. Philly didn't play last week. The only team that played last week was Detroit. There was a 4-point move based on what the Lions looked like against the Bears last week. In my mind, that's an overreaction. You don't think so?
How many people pay attention
move based on how one team looked last week?
How many people pay attention to those look-ahead lines?
I do.
All right. All right. Well, apparently people are. If Wentz keeps getting it done, why not? But that was a horrible performance at Chicago. The offense only scored 6 points. They had the long punt return. Hey, great job.
Yeah, but let's not forget. Okay, again, Minnesota last night won the turnover battle against the Giants, and they went into that game. There was a 14 turnover differential. The Vikings were +8. The Giants were -6. Now we're talking about a situation where the Eagles, the only team in the NFL that hasn't turned the ball over even once, and the Lions, the only team in the NFL that only has forced one turnover so far this season. Every other team has more. Does that change? Maybe.
Yep. Looking forward.
Anyhow, early money towards Philadelphia. Clearly, significant early money towards the Eagles.
Great job by Jack Del Rio. He took over the defense after the back-to-back 500-yard games they allowed to start the season. Defense playing well, and money coming in on the under in the Charger-Raider game.
I'm surprised about this one. 52.5 down to 50, and nothing in the injury report that's any different from last week for either squad. On the offensive side, both teams banged up defensively. And I mean, the Raiders gave up a ton of big plays in Baltimore last week. They let Steve Smith beat them deep. Steve Smith can't even run. The guy's so old. Oakland's defense still has issues. I'm surprised at the ferocity of this move. We're all, 52.5 down to 50. Fairly significant at this stage of the season for an NFL total in 24 hours.
Cincinnati at Dallas. The Bengals, now the favorites. The market's not buying the Cowboys.
Yeah, I mean, Cincy +1 at the open. Now they're -1 at Dallas. So we have a switch of favorites in that game. And, they're viewing the market's viewing the Cowboys as a fraud who just haven't committed turnovers yet. Only 2 giveaways through their first 4 games. But remember, the money came pretty heavy against Dallas last week, too. And all that money lost.
All right, college. Early money on Georgia Tech at Pitt.
Yeah, and it went through the key number of 7. Yellow Jackets from +8 down to +6.5. Of course, the 2-touchdown margin defeat they suffered to Miami last week came on 2 defensive scores for the Hurricanes.
Maryland now favored at Penn State.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit surprised by the significance of this move as well. Been heavy Terrapins money. The markets are not liking the Nittany Lions. We saw it last week when we saw a lot of Minnesota money in Happy Valley, and we're seeing it again with Maryland. Now the favorite in a game they opened as the underdog.
And the markets don't like Notre Dame. NC State favored against the Irish.
Yeah, how's this for a line change? But again, NC State came out of their bye. They played really well. Notre Dame was supposed to fix their defense. Their defense wasn't fixed against Syracuse. They still got the money, but it wasn't because the defense got stops. Wolfpack have gone from underdog to favorites in early week betting.
And the market's not respecting Arizona State at all. They were 4-0. They were big dogs at USC. They were blown out. Check the QB injury in that one. And money showing for UCLA.
Yeah, the Bruins bet up from 7.5 to 10, and I wouldn't be surprised this line goes even higher. UCLA took a lot of money last week. Arizona State, everyone was betting against them last week, and everyone cashed who was betting on UCLA and betting against Arizona State. You tend to see more of the same when that happens.
And we stay in the Pac-12. It's a huge game for the Buffaloes. Backup quarterback, no problem. They're at USC.
Yeah, and Colorado, they've taken money on a pretty consistent basis. I think every game this year, they're almost like Louisville, where there's been some Colorado money week after week after week. We're seeing it again. Buffs from +6.5 down to +4.5 at USC. And yeah, the markets don't care whether Lou Fowl plays or whether he sits.
All right, up next, Major League Baseball playoffs. Wild card game number 1 tonight, the Orioles and the Blue Jays. And we'll get to the Giants and the Mets, plus Jimmy Vacaro coming up on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Do your research before you bet. Check out our ratings guide to see which books have the best ratings and sign-up bonuses. Open up several accounts. Shop for lines at SBRodds.com. Always be ahead of the game.
All right, we're back on SportsBit Betting Insight today. Time for big game breakdown. Tonight from Toronto, play-in game number 1 American League, the Orioles against the Blue Jays. Blue Jays $1.50, 8.5 the total. Tillman against Stroman. I can't believe the decisions by both managers in this game with the starting pitchers. Let's start in Baltimore, where Tillman is a wild card in a wild card game. Just 19 innings pitched, over 4 starts since returning the rotation, Teddy, and he struggled big time in his ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, Tillman had more walks and strikeouts in each of the last 2 starts as well, which is a significant red flag. You look at his career numbers at the Rogers Center, it's a disaster. 2-6 with a 7.01 ERA. And you look at all that stuff, you say, oh my God, what's Showalter thinking? Why on earth would Tillman be there? Well, what has he done this year? Well, he's 0-0 at Rogers Center, but he's got a 2.38 ERA. He's dominated both times, and the Orioles have won both of those starts. Let me read the quote from Chris Tillman, because I think it's worth talking about here. Quote, I think anytime you're able to pitch well somewhere or against a certain team, I think it helps a little bit. But I don't buy into it all that much. Every day is different. Every day you're carrying different stuff. You've got to find a way to navigate every game a different way. I don't dwell on the past too much, but we played well here this year, and it's been fun. I've seen them a lot, and they've seen me a lot. There's no secrets. I know what they're going to do, and they know what I'm going to do. So I had an interesting conversation, Paulie, with a former pitcher. I'm not going to mention his name here, but a former pitcher at a pretty high level, and a guy who I had, very interested in having a conversation with. I don't know that he knew necessarily who I was, but I wanted to press him for information. And I asked him about the ballpark. I'd say, hey, when you go somewhere where you haven't pitched well, is that in your head? Is there a ballpark? And he basically said the same thing that Chris Tillman said. He's like, look, there are nights where I'm dealing it. It doesn't matter if I've struggled in this ballpark. If I'm dealing, they're not going to be able to hit me. When I'm missing my spots, doesn't matter if I've dominated that team 100 times. If I don't have my best stuff, they're live to hit me. So the history for a pitcher in any given venue, yeah, it's a factor. It may not be a key factor, and that's what Chris Tillman's telling us here.
Okay, I would have started Ubaldo, but it's all hands on deck in this one. It's win or go home. So Bundy, Tillman, Ubaldo, they all could get in there for Baltimore, and we'll get to Toronto in a second. But that's Buck's ready to throw anybody out there if he struggles.
Well, yeah, look at the quote. This is Buck Showalter. We had probably three options, and Chris is one of those good options. There's not much separated there. We feel good about any of the three guys, including Dylan, Bundy, and they all three may pitch in the game. I think we look at a certain finality with the starter, but these games usually have a lot of things going on with them that everybody gets to play a big part in it if it's a competitive game. Just because someone's not starting a game doesn't mean they can't be real impactful. So basically, Showalter's saying, if Tillman struggles, who cares? I'll throw in Bundy. If Bundy struggles, who cares? I'll throw in Jimenez. And if those guys all struggle, let's not forget the Baltimore Orioles bullpen since the start of September. 1.70 ERA. That's the best in baseball, and it's a very different number compared to the Toronto Blue Jays with a 4.60 ERA during that span, and they've blown 7 out of 14 save opportunities during that span as well.
Horrible. If it's close, it's a mismatch in Baltimore's favor. With the Jays, they're going with Stroman. I thought they'd go Liriano, who pitched against the Orioles last week and went 6 1/3 and struck out 10 guys. But they're going with Stroman, who he had to rally down the stretch just to get his ERA under 5, and he has been horrible against the Orioles in his career.
I'm with you. Jim Gibbons, quote, I think Stroh's the perfect guy. Big game. I've seen him do it before. He's going to come out throwing strikes, so we're glad he's available. You want your best competitors out there. Stroman, 4 starts against the Orioles this season, 1-2 with a 7.04 ERA. This is the number that stands out to me. 33 hits versus only 12 strikeouts allowed. But like Baltimore, Gibbons made it very clear. Marco Estrada, Francisco Liriano, they'll be available. They'll be ready to go potentially from the second pitch of the ballgame.
And that's key because the Blue Jays screwed around and had to wait until the last day to get in. They burned Happ and they burned Sanchez. So that's why they got to throw Stroman. Even it should be one of their big guns, as you saw what Sanchez did. A great season. All right, that's the American League. National League Wednesday night. Live odds, sportsbookreview.com. Giants in New York to take on the Mets. Mad Bum against Thor. Mets $1.13. 6 the total. Different setting here, Teddy. It's 2 aces going at it.
Yeah, and even that 113, we put that in, an hour ago, and it's down to 108. We're already seeing money for the Giants. And yeah, completely different setting. On Tuesday night, we're going to see pitching by committee. On Wednesday, we're going to see Thor and Mad Bum out there to duel it out from start to finish. Syndergaard, going to be fresh, maybe too fresh. It's only his second appearance since September 19th. Clinching early allowed them to skip his last start. His take on getting the call, here's the quote. It means the world to me. I'm going to go out there to do what I have been doing, go out there and not let the game get too fast for me. Just go out there and have fun. Syndergaard in the postseason last year, 2-1 with a 3.32 ERA.
You give me one choice. I get to pick one pitcher in Major League Baseball to win a big game. I'm picking Mad Bum. No
Yep.
stranger to postseason pressure. 7-3 with a 2.14 over 12 starts and 88 innings.
But his last two starts, he's just been okay. 13.1 innings. He gave up 8 runs, 12 hits, 3 homers. And when we look at Mad Bum, the home road stats, I don't know if they stand out, but he's unhittable at home. 9-4, 2.14 ERA. On the highway, his ERA more than a run higher. And his one-loss record, much more mediocre at 6-5.
Yeah, I say this too. I mean, the Mets can come out and they can be loose Wednesday night. I mean, they lost DeGrom, Harvey, and Matz. Nobody expected them to make the postseason, let alone can they win a game and do something against the Cubs.
That being said, look at San Fran. I mean, A, they've been here before. B, no team had a worse second half than the Giants did, and they get a sigh of relief. Hey, guess what? We still, despite all of our failures over the second half of the season, get to play for a World Series title. We just got this win. We just got to win this little game at Citi Field on Wednesday to do it.
Up next, Jimmy Vacaro from the South Point here in Las Vegas. Bookmaker for over 40 years. 5 great minutes with Jimmy. Will recap how the books did and how the players made out coming up on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.
Research before you bet. Be sure to check out SBR Picks for the best game predictions, breakdowns, and much, much more.
Back on SportsBit, time for 5 great minutes with Jimmy Vacaro. He's on every Tuesday. Go visit him at the South Point here in Las Vegas and follow him on Twitter at Jimmy Vacaro. Let me start here. It seems we have a Hail Mary and a lightning delay every week now.
Well, it surely is a little different than it was, although this week a little bit been contemptuous way to call that game 27-7. I thought that they would with that big lead with 6.5 minutes to go, but that would have been an absolute pain in the butt for the operators here in Las Vegas because you're looking at another minute and a half, and there was a lot of money on the winning side there, so maybe we were rooting for them to call the game. It wouldn't have been official because it didn't go 55 minutes. But thankfully, they did finish it, even though we're a loser. But you're seeing more and more. I have no rhyme and reason. I don't really know what's the tipping point, Paulie, of like when somebody calls it or who calls it that the teams and the fans must exit the field. But trust me, even though we lost to the game, I'd rather see it go the whole way as opposed to having a no-action game and have people screaming at the counter. Although because this was a big bet game, a lot of money. Wasn't like giving $3,000 or $4,000 back. This was a major game for us, and I'd rather take my lumps here and pay it as opposed to taking the heat we would have from now until forever.
What was it like at your joint with the Tennessee-Georgia finish?
The theater of the absurd, I'd like to call this, and we talk about it all the time. What is there left that we haven't seen, but something else will pop up. And it goes back to the last 10 seconds, 2 touchdowns were scored on basically what you would consider Hail Mary passes, although the Tennessee guy was lost in the secondary when the other guy got loose. But the celebration in the end zone, the offside penalty, moving a little bit closer. And then, just on a personal note, I keep railing at you can't rush 3 people against anybody because the guy had time to throw the ball 50, 60 yards in the air. And if you watch closely, you saw 3 guys end up rushing. 5 were blocking them, so the kid had a lot of time, threw it up, and once the ball gets to the end zone, even though there was obviously more red jerseys back there, you always have the chance of getting an interference call in the end zone, or in this case, this kid just went up above him. But it was absolutely pandemonium in our sports book for that reason. And it just adds to the thrill, the excitement of being around these places on a Saturday afternoon. But like I said, I've never seen 2 Hail Marys in the last 10 seconds of the game. And Butch Jones falling to his knee just added more to the, I don't know whether you call it gratefulness or absurdity to this crazy game, this great game that we love. And to me, you can mark me down as I have for the past, I can't tell you how many years, Paulie. I enjoy the Saturdays much more than the Sundays.
Yes, games all day. And so far, the college football game of the year, how was Louisville-Clemson?
I can't even begin to describe it because here it is. It's the same situation. You have 2 great teams, obviously with great quarterbacks. I wouldn't say the history is so much on Louisville's side, but since Petrino went there, he's made great strides in the past 2 years. Clemson, always a tough place to play. The beginning when they come in on the buses and they run down that steep, stairway to some degree to get onto the field. You talk about college enthusiasm can't get much better than that. As far as the game, it's an absolutely instant classic. You can't write it up. You can't draw it up. and you saw at the end of the game, one spin one way or the other way. Obviously, Clemson is the loser. Louisville is the winner. You're down big at the halftime, and it just shows you that you're never out of these games anymore, no matter what the score is and what the situation is. You would think that maybe the other team would go to sleep after the halftime score. I think they come out and just outscored them by 20-something in the third quarter to make this unbelievable ending. But as far as the action was concerned, Paul, this was a game where you can absolutely say two-way. Remember, Clemson opened 2.5, got bet the whole way to the other side 2. We closed the game pick, and all we were rooting for there was, no lightning delay, and don't call this game off. We made a nice profit no matter who won. But as far as viewing, what can I say, pal?
Yep. Is business up, and is it louder in the sports books when the Cowboys and Raiders are good?
Two answers there. Business is rapidly getting more and more, and I just don't understand it. But I understand the understanding of, the theater of the absurd, which I used a couple of minutes ago, and I think that's just part of the attraction. And the Raider team, obviously for 40-some years, it was, Cowboys were America's team. Well, with just the chatter that the Raiders might end up here in Las Vegas, just the idea that they would have their home team, we are now starting to gather our own Raiders every week as the game gets, obviously, you get down to the fourth quarter. And you talk about a crazy game there. You saw a wonderful game where they wound up, obviously, beating the Ravens there. But it was absolutely, Raiders, the last half of the game. But it just adds more because naturally after the Raider people did their little song and dance, and there was obviously a few chorus of boos coming from the people who, A, don't like the Raiders, or B, maybe they just had the Ravens in the game, so it was a lot of fun again.
Yeah, bookmaker for over 40 years, Jimmy Vacaro, our guest. Go visit him at the South Point if you're ever in Las Vegas. How was the handle for the first London game, 6:30 our time kick?
Well, I didn't even make it there as kickoff was, but I kept calling the book from about 6:15 to 6:30. Well, here it is. It's 6:30 in the morning, and according to the kids who were running the book at that time, there was about 50 people who were already there sitting in their chairs waiting for a 6:30 kickoff, and plenty of action. Actually, the game ended up a small loser for us as a lot of money showed about last hour before game time on Jacksonville. We had Indianapolis 2.5 the night before, closed the game 1, but it wasn't a massive loss. But to answer your question, yes, people get up out of their bed, drive to the sports book, and sit there from 6:30, and they were there till 6:30 that night. That shows you the strength of the NFL.
That's right. All right, run it down like only you can. How did Sunday go?
Sunday was very good. We won a big bet on the Cleveland Browns being so inept that people took the 10-9 and 8.5 off us. It was a good win. It was a good win for us. Naturally, the worst was the Denver Broncos. We opened the game 3, won as high as 4, and never had a chance in the game, so we got swamped pretty good. One of those silent assassins for us was actually, the Jet game. It was just absolutely marvelous. People just kept betting the Jets. Even though it was like a low point spread, you don't see that thing jumping around too much. It was one of our bigger wins of the day. And Fitzpatrick, obviously, again, 2 interceptions. So getting off early with the 2 wins was very, very good for us. And naturally, the late game, I don't know, everybody just believed in the Chiefs. The team just has scored, I think, 7 touchdowns in 4 games so far. But it was just Chiefs. We would have made about 20% more if the total went under, but surely didn't have no chance. And the other silent assassin, my friend, was once again the Arizona Cardinals, who just simply Caesars money line and sides was all in favor of the Cardinals there. So we had a very good Sunday. And what it did also, it just relieved a lot of pressure for the Monday night game, as there was really not a lot of carryovers. Having a lot of fun, but we all, you have to try to make money, and the Arizona Cardinals surely helped us get there yesterday.
How'd you do Saturday?
Saturday was a very, very good day. The silent assassin, once again, was North Carolina, Florida State. The game opened 11.5. Wasn't a lot of money on Florida State, even though the point spread dropped there. But we talk about these crazy teaser endings and these crazy money line endings. Here's a kid couldn't make an extra point, kicked the 54-yarder, bang. Jimbo will be playing the Citrus Bowl in Miami probably in January as opposed to going somewhere else. But that was a very, very big game for us.
And the baseball playoffs start. How many people come in with the day games?
Well, it really helps Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays in the joints because naturally those are our slowest days. And I don't think you could ask as an operator for all the marquee teams that got there. Naturally, the Cubs will probably outright any other game that's going up against them, probably 15 to 20%, because there's actually people now who there's a sympathetic fan who's coming out of the woodwork, maybe rooting for the Cubs after all these years. But as far as like action, once again for us, and like I said, we're not the biggest joint in town, but we take a fair bite, and we took a bite Saturday. I got bet the Dodgers to win the World Series at 9-1 and put them on for 5,000 for us. That's a fair bite. They're 45,000, but actually took a little bit of the heat off the Cubs. But I look for a great playoff series only because, as I said, there's a lot of teams in there with a lot of marquee interest, and it should be fun.
Very good, sir. Thanks for 5 great minutes. We'll talk to you next week.
Hey, SportsBit viewers, tune into the MLB Odds Couple show today. The MLB playoffs starts, and Mike Brenner and I just broke down the game. I passed.
Hey, don't tell them what my pick is, though.
No, but you had 2 picks.
Yes, two
Two
picks.
picks on the game, and you can find out what those 2 picks are just by tuning in today's show, right?
That's right. Get the best of both worlds. When you're done with Teddy and Paulie, come on over to our house, because I got some ticket cashers.
You said 5 great minutes with Jimmy Vacaro. Let me check my watch. That felt like 10 great minutes with Jimmy Vacaro, but worth it.
It's good.
Always good information from Jimmy. Forget about Jimmy for a minute. It is play of the daytime. We've been red hot in football.
Red hot.
Let's see if we can keep going in baseball.
All
What
right,
do we got,
back.
Paul?
Yep, sorry. Back to the Orioles and the Blue Jays. Betting number 931. Orioles plus $1.40. Huge edge to the Orioles with the bullpen. We think it's going to be a close game, and if it is, forget about it. They have the best closer in baseball. We mentioned all the issues with the Blue Jays bullpen, and Osuna struggled big time in save opportunities. I don't trust Cecil. I don't trust Grilly. I don't trust Osuna. And I love that Orioles bullpen. And I don't think Stroman is up to the challenge as well. Orioles plus $1.40. The play of the day coming up tonight. How about the guy who bet $5,000 on the Dodgers at 9-1?
I mean, I think the Dodgers are live. That's a bigger wager than I tend to make on futures. Let's put it that way.
Yes. All right. We're back Wednesday. More baseball, NFL news, and we'll get to some of these college football breakdowns as well. We'll talk to you then on SportsBit. Betting Insight today on SBRPicks.com.